Well, hello. How's everyone doing? Friday night in Cleveland. Welcome to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That would have worked for a Tuesday. It is PechaKucha Night, Volume 39. Welcome to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There we go. Thank you very much. I am so excited to be here tonight. We've got an awesome set of presenters for you, and so excited to hear the stories that they're going to share with us. Real quick before we get started, I'm going to back up until I'm not facing my back to anyone. How many people here have been to a PechaKucha Night? Raise your hands. All right. So PechaKucha Night Cleveland, we've been doing it since 2008. We had a little blip there. I think everyone probably knows why. We're still trying to get our kind of heads back into things, but the event happens in over 1,300 cities over the world, all over the world. And when you look at the number of cities that have been doing it the longest, we are up there with just about the best cities in the world, which is a really amazing thing to be able to say. And it's because we have awesome places like the Rock Hall that partner with us, and awesome people like Allison that reach out and want to help. And we are really excited to still be doing it. The names up on the screen, this is the group of people that over the past kind of almost, 15, 20 years have been helping PechaKucha move forward. Co-founder in the audience tonight, Mr. Racine Parker. Got Trent here as well. Got so many people, so thank you guys for being here. Allison. These are the organizations that kind of, I make the joke that don't fire us when we should be at work, but we're like preparing for the evening. And one last thing on that, if you are interested in getting involved, we are ramping back up. So please just reach out if you're interested in being involved. Doesn't cost anything. There's no requirement. But reach out. We'll come back to you, and we'll take the steps from there. And tonight, I have the distinct pleasure, and I'm going to switch microphones here, of introducing our host for the evening. That was by the far the smoothest mic transition I've ever seen a venue do. Round of applause for the booth. Jeez, oh man. That is remarkable. Thank you. So I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming to the podium Allison Lucasy-Love. Allison Lucasy-Love, AICPA's career presents an amalgamation of robust experiences and perspectives for equitable redevelopment of the built environment, informed by her architectural training and extensive community placemaking projects. She's a licensed architect and a certified planner. Before assuming the role of managing director of major projects with a focus on downtown and waterfronts at the Greater Cleveland Partnership, Allison was the director of planning and development at the City of Euclid, where she led the $30 million waterfront improvement plan from concept through construction. She previously worked as a PM in architecture and real estate development firms in Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and Shanghai. Cleveland's the coolest one. She currently serves as an elected member of the APA Ohio Board of Trustees and is the founder of the Cleveland chapter of the Awesome Foundation. She serves on multiple boards, has launched a number of other nonprofits, and is generally just a lovely person to be around. When she is not working, she is living on the shores of Lake Erie in the Collinwood neighborhood of Cleveland, where she enjoys paddleboarding and watching stunning sunsets. Allison, welcome to the stage.
Thank you for the clicker. Thank you so much, Mike. You're going to hear a lot of bios tonight. That's part of the PechaKucha model here. Again, thank you, Mike, for hosting PechaKucha over the past, would we say, 15 years. And thank you again for being willing to host the Untold Stories of Cleveland's Lakefront tonight. I'm so excited to dig into them. Also have to thank our host here, Paul back in the booth, and Angel, who has been amazing here today at the Rock Hall. Thank you so much for hosting us and for being a very important stakeholder here in the North Coast Lakefront. Like Mike said, I work for the Greater Cleveland Partnership and have been so honored to be working alongside the City of Cleveland. We have many representatives in the room and those that will continue to join us throughout the evening that have been working hard to build up this project. So before we dive in to the presentations, my role tonight, as Mike mentioned, is to set some context. So in early 2023, under Mayor Bibb's leadership, the City of Cleveland hired field operations, and you'll hear more from Lisa Switkin towards the end of the night, to co-create with our community a master plan for the downtown lakefront. Of course, this work is grounded in Mayor Bibb's vision for equitably redeveloped, accessible, and joyful. We want to keep that word at the top of our minds, for joyful waterfronts. but it stems from a place of healing. And you'll see that that's really undergirding the vision and the stories that you'll hear tonight. In short, this is a vision for a lakefront that works for everyone. So to create a future space where all Clevelanders feel belonging, the land in question, which as you can see today consists mostly of asphalt parking lots, should become more than just a new development. We believe a redeveloped lakefront must honor its past, which may be surprising or maybe not surprising to some of you. Before the personal automobile began dominating land use decisions here in Cleveland and many cities, much of our downtown lakefront was publicly accessible, as seen in this postcard image from Cleveland Public Library's archives. The land not all that long ago behind the county courthouse and also the Cleveland Browns stadiums where Gray Gardens was a park. And this is the interactive part of the evening. Can anyone guess what it is today? It was a park. It is now parking. Yes. You all get a gold sticker. So planning the downtown lakefront is nothing new. Since Daniel Burnham's design of the 1903 group plan vision for the malls, there have been 16 official and many more unofficial plans, resulting in the lakefront that we know today, including where we sit now in the Rock Hall. These development stories, though, often leave out the people and the places that do not neatly fit into that narrative of progress and prosperity. People left out of the conversation are pushed out of the picture, both literally and metaphorically. And so it's been our intention as a project team to gather stories and memories of our lakefront from all Clevelanders. And that is a slide from Third Space Action Lab, one of our very important community engagement partners, and many more engagement partners are here today, including Murphy Epson, has done a phenomenal job for us. But as they wrote on this slide, we have to reimagine a future of our lakefront together, and together is a key word there. We will continue to collect these stories until the fullest picture can be painted and the redeveloped lakefront embodies our collective stories. And we anticipate that to be both memories past, but also the best memories that are yet to come when we all can experience this new redeveloped lakefront together. So again, another interactive part. By a show of hands, how many of you have already shared a story or a memory with us at one of our previous engagement sessions? Okay, a couple of hands. Well, all of you tonight will have that opportunity. After we finish the formal program, we'll go down to the open house on the third floor, and we will have an opportunity for you all to professionally record in the PechaKucha style, 20 seconds or less, a memory or a story of that lakefront. And finally, we want to make sure that we are meeting the mayor's mandate here, that this lakefront becomes a place of healing. And so we must transcend the physical and the social barriers that have kept us from embracing this great lake. Physical barriers, such as the shoreway, we can remove with political will and funding. Social and cultural barriers are much harder to dismantle without understanding, which is why we are here tonight to surface stories, untold narratives of people and communities and their relationship to Lake Erie. And so without further ado, I'll turn it back over to Mike Kristoff, and we will launch into our PechaKucha presentations for this evening.
Thank you so much, Allison. So there were a few people here that didn't raise their hands when we said who's been to one of these nights before. So I do think I need to do one more thing. Here's how these presentations work. Every presenter so the first 5, you're going to see they have 20 images. Every image is timed to 20 seconds. So once I give the go-ahead with this little clicker thing, they're going to start, and the slides are automatically going to go until they're done. And then you're going to see a slide, and this is where you come in, that says, thank you. That's when you clap really, really hard and cheer them on for doing something that was probably a little mortifying because most people haven't had to present in a style like that. And then you'll see a next slide, and then we bring up the next person. So it is pretty quick, and you're going to see 5 people like that. We're going to do a quick little pause, gather our thoughts. Allison is then going to introduce Lisa to talk about the master plan in a slightly more extended format. So that's kind of how it's going to work. Just wanted to make sure everyone knew that. And now, without further ado, we have our first presenter of the evening. Cynthia Connolly is the chair of the Lake Erie Native American Council and the director of programming at the City Club of Cleveland. She also teaches the Native American Studies course at Kent State University. A citizen of the Little Traverse Bay bands of Ottawa Indians located in northern Michigan, Cynthia was named a Native American Top 40 Under 40 by the National Center for American Indian Enterprises and Development, as well as the 2021 Crain's Cleveland Business 40 Under 40. Huge round of applause for Cynthia.
Let's get ready with that clicker. Oh, no. All right, here we go. Here we go. Ani dindisukwe indishnakas, aji jacques ndodum, waganaka singo dao and donjaba. Hello, my name is Cynthia Connolly. I just introduced myself in my native language. My Anishinaabe name is Blue Jay Woman, and if any of you are avid bird watchers, you will know that blue jays are loud, persistent, and somewhat aggressive, and so I feel like I'm a perfect candidate to kick off tonight's event. When talking about the history of Cleveland, we often see these historical maps. When you look at them, you may see promise, revolution, and progress. As a Native woman, I see loss, hardship, and injustice. I am here to remind you of one very important thing. You are on Native land. Always have and always will be. My people, the Odawa, have lived on these lands for millennia. And these lands are also home to the Potawatomi, Ojibwe, Haudenosaunee, Miami, Shawnee, and more. And there are reminders of our existence all around us, often in the language that we use and still use today. Ohio, which you may recognize as Ohio, it actually means good river in the Seneca language. Cuyahoga, you may have heard, means crooked river. It literally translates to jawbone in the Seneca language, but if you think about how it shaped it, that tracks. But before colonizations, our communities were very connected. We had extensive networks of land trails and waterways and used them for travel, trade, and gathering resources. You'll notice it looks very familiar to our current interstate roadway system. You kind of see US 23 going down to Columbus. But there's two noteworthy ones that I want to point out here. The Great Trail, which extended from roughly Pittsburgh to Detroit, crossing right through northeast Ohio, hitting Sandusky and Toledo. And the Shore Trail, from Erie, Pennsylvania to Detroit, which is roughly around the I-90 corridor. And locally, roads like Lake Avenue and Detroit Road all have routes in native trails that traversed along the cliffs in Cleveland. These trails quickly determined locations of early settlements and military forts. They also served as major arteries for backcountry settlers who actually committed a great deal of crime and murder as they illegally pushed their way west. This spawned the 7 Years' War and creation of boundary lines and multiple treaties by the British in attempt for peace. These settlement restrictions kept moving further west. They didn't work, and they served as fuel for the American Revolution. Colonization was rapid. It only took 33 years to move beyond that green proclamation line to when Moses Cleveland reached the shores of Lake Erie. By 1841, most tribal nations were forcibly removed from Ohio, Indiana, and parts of other Great Lakes states, often using our very same trails to Oklahoma. It wasn't just the Cherokee forced to walk the Trail of Tears. Some Native people still remained in Ohio, some never left, but it wouldn't be until the 1950s and 70s when the population of Native Americans in this city would grow again. That's because of the federal government's relocation program. This federal policy would literally bus Native Americans from reservations to about 8 select cities in the United States. Cleveland was one of them. It was chosen specifically because it was so far from tribal nations or reservations. They really didn't want natives to go back to the res. While relocation was guised as a jobs program with promises of good jobs and good homes in the big city, at its roots, relocation was yet another attempt at cultural genocide and assimilation. Rather than invest in tribal nations and reservations, the government wanted to lessen their responsibility to treaties and obligations in the hopes that we would just become less native. A Bureau of Indian Affairs office was even opened here for a few years over on East 9th Street. But one silver lining from relocation was the growth of urban Native communities and activism during this time. Notable activist Russell Means and others worked out of St. John's Episcopal Church in Ohio City, launching the American Indian Movement and other efforts to find justice for Native people. I always found this an interesting overlap with the Black community, knowing that St. John has a history as a last stop on the Underground Railroad. And one of my favorite stories in this time was when the city of Cleveland called Russ Means and asked him to greet Moses Cleveland on the shore in a settlement reenactment. And can you come in your costumes? Yeah, sure, he said. We'll be there. But our community showed up, and this time they refused to let Moses off the boat. Today, we are in the fourth generation since relocation. We are your neighbors, classmates, and coworkers. We have community members at major universities, at the VA, NASA, and the Cleveland Clinic. We have social workers, grassroots leaders. Most importantly, we are still here. As we talk about the lakefront, we often hear questions like, how can we leverage the lake? It is our greatest asset. To Native people, that sounds almost parasitic. The question we need to be asking is, what are we going to do for the water in return for its gifts it gives so freely to us? The Great Lakes makes up 95% of the fresh water in the United States. These lakes are sacred. Water is a living spirit, and its spirit can die. Our very own Cuyahoga River was crying out in flames as it was nearing death. As much as we want to connect and enjoy the lakefront, our fundamental commitment is to protect the water so it can give its gifts to our communities for generations to come. Robin Wall-Kimmerer from Braiding Sweetgrass said it best, for the earth to stay in balance, for the gifts to continue to flow, we must give back in equal measure for what we take. Most humans believe their actions are harmful to the environment, and we need to flip that script. We can and should be part of the solution. We need to lift up the notion of gratitude and reciprocity when it comes to water. And there's incredible work being done on water rights. This is Dr. Kelsey Leonard, an amazing Shinnecock water protector, and she is arguing for the legal personhood of water. And it actually doesn't sound as radical as it seems, because if we can grant personhood to Hobby Lobby, we should be able to do that for our water. So think about the last time water offered its gifts to you. Did you take a drink from your water bottle? Were you fishing at Edgewater Pier? Have you ever even thanked the water before? If not, consider this a challenge to each of you to reconsider your relationship with one of humankind's most essential resources, because everything is connected and our human existence hinges on our gratitude to reciprocity, to earth and water. Thanks.
Cynthia, thank you so much. All right, take a breath. Next up, we have Fran Stewart. Fran helped create the Ohio Freedom Path audio guide, which is available for free download on Google Play and the App Store. She is a founder and board member of the Restore Cleveland Hope, where she helps provide tours at the Cozad Bates House Underground Railroad Interpretive Center. Everyone, please welcome Fran to the microphone.
Okay, you ready? Cleveland was once known as hope to freedom seekers and those who helped them. This presentation offers a glimpse of Cleveland's Underground Railroad history. Learn more by visiting the Cozad Bates House Interpretive Center in University Circle or by downloading a free app called Ohio Freedom Path that I created along with Jan Thrope and Leanne Moses, who are in the audience. The app features inspiring narratives and amazing local voice talents. In fact, Ohio was central to the secret work of the Underground Railroad. OSU professor Wilbur Siebert researched and developed this map in the late 1800s, showing routes freedom seekers took across the state. Despite its name, the Underground Railroad was neither underground nor a railroad. Instead, it was a loose network of safe havens for freedom seekers escaping the brutality of slavery. Ohio may have had more such safe havens than any other state. Our app aligns to the Ohio to Erie Trail, which closely traces an Underground Railroad route Siebert documented. Much of the trail follows the path of the Ohio and Erie Canal. John Malvin, who was born free in Virginia, spent a number of years piloting canal boats in Ohio, where he helped a group of freedom seekers he once found on board. Malvin arrived in Ohio in 1827. He was surprised to find that a supposed free state like Ohio treated people who looked like him so harshly. Black laws required a $500 good character bond and prevented black residents from testifying in court. Malvin wrote of finding most doors closed to people like him, except for prison doors. In Cleveland, Malvin worked to overturn these black laws, raised money to build schools for black children denied access to public education, and integrated the First Baptist Church at Euclid and Erie Street in what may have been the nation's first sit-in. He insisted all should be equal to worship together. Like Malvin, William Wells Brown discovered that working on a boat allowed him opportunity to help others like himself. He had been born a slave, but had escaped off a steamboat docked in Cincinnati. In 1842, while working on a ship in Lake Erie, he helped 69 freedom seekers reach the safety of Canada. Boats were indeed important means of escape. At Station Hope on Cleveland's west side, freedom seekers hid in the tower of St. John's Episcopal Church, watching for lanterns from small boats near Whiskey Island. These boats would ferry hidden passengers to larger ships in the lake, bound for Buffalo and Detroit. William Wells Brown, whose first escape attempt with his mother failed, stayed in Cleveland only briefly. He soon became a sought-after speaker in the anti-slavery cause, sharing his personal story of bondage. He may have been the nation's first black novelist and is considered its first published black playwright. Horace Ford is one of Cleveland's best documented Underground Railroad operators. He wrote of the hazardous business of giving a panting runaway a piece of bread and pointing him toward Canada. Such a crime faced punishment of 6 months in prison, a $1,000 fine, or confiscation of property. Horace Ford, his father and brothers, sheltered freedom seekers at their homesteads near what is today University Circle. Horace recalled taking secret cargo hidden in the foss bottom of a wagon down Euclid Avenue to Erie Street, now East 9th, ultimately to a barbershop near Public Square run by a black man named John Brown. John Brown's stepdaughter, Lucy Stanton, remembered him harboring up to 13 freedom seekers at a time. Lucy Stanton herself became an active and eloquent abolitionist and feminist, pleading for the rights of the oppressed. She is considered the nation's first black woman to complete a 4-year collegiate course of study. Brown, Malvin, and others organized and participated in a series of conventions in Cleveland and around the state. In 1848, Frederick Douglass came to Cleveland to preside over a national convention advocating for equal rights, education, access to good jobs, fair pay, and an end to slavery. The convention was held at the Cuyahoga County Courthouse at Public Square and was one of several trips Douglass would make to Northeast Ohio. This convention was also notable because it called for future participation of women in such gatherings. Abolition and women's suffrage were closely linked movements at the time. A decade later, the courthouse was replaced, and this new courthouse became the site of 2 important cases related to freedom and the federal fugitive slave law. The first involved the rescue of John Price. During the Oberlin-Wellington rescue, more than 100 abolitionists rose up to free the young man taken by bounty hunters. 37 men were charged with violating federal law and were jailed in Cleveland. Only 2 stood trial. Simeon Bushnell, a white man who had driven the wagon that rushed Price away to freedom, and Charles Langston, one of 12 black rescuers. Langston was said to have threatened the slave catchers by warning, quote, "We will have him." Charles Langston, the grandfather of poet Langston Hughes, was found guilty. At his sentencing, he was allowed to speak for himself and delivered an impassioned indictment of the U.S. justice system. His eloquence earned him a reduced sentence, 20 days in jail and a $100 fine. The second case was the January 1861 trial of Sarah Lucy Bagby, a young woman enslaved in Virginia who escaped to Cleveland. Her purported owner, a man named Goshorn, learned her whereabouts and came to regain his, quote, property. Bagby may have been the last freedom seeker returned to bondage under the federal fugitive slave law. Many Clevelanders supported Bagby's return as proof that the North would abide by the law of the land. Radical abolitionists disagreed, saying Cleveland had shown that the North would, quote, eat dirt to avoid war. Ultimately, sacrificing Bagby did little to diffuse tensions. The nation was at war within 4 months. But don't despair. Bagby's story takes a happier turn. She was freed for good 2 years after her return to slavery, when the Union Army captured and imprisoned Goshorn. She married a Union soldier and made her way back to Cleveland. She is buried in Woodland Cemetery, where a donated headstone now reads, "Unfettered and Free."
Fran, thank you so much. All right. Next up, we have Keisha Johnson-Chambers. Keisha has a combined 25 years of experience in the municipal, aviation, and water, wastewater utility sectors. She currently serves as the Assistant Director of the City of Cleveland Mayor's Office of Capital Projects, where she has oversight responsibility for architecture, engineering, and construction activities for roads, sidewalks, city-owned facilities, and park and recreation sites. She also serves as the project manager for the North Coast Connector project, which is in the development stage to build a land bridge from Mall C to the lake and reimagine the shoreway. She also has a passion for sharing Cleveland's African American history and curates tours and cultural experiences through her business, This is Black Cleveland, and uplifting local professional Black women through Black Women Work. Keisha serves on numerous boards, and we are so lucky to have her here presenting this evening. Please welcome Keisha to the stage.
Traveling While Negro, the precursor to Driving While Black. This display of hate is the practice of whites monitoring African Americans in their daily life. Recent examples include Central Park Karen in New York City and Barbecue Karen in Oakland, California. My talk will be about the evolution of the Negro Motorist Green Book and how it sought to help Black people find peace and safety during their travels and recreation. The Great Migration, beginning around 1910, coupled with the popularity of the automobile, resulted in more Black travelers on the highway and visiting new cities and families and friends. Blacks came to Cleveland for work opportunities and to leave behind the oppressive South. In Cleveland, they found amenities that were not available to them in the South. In this picture, you see children in the Glenview Pool at East 110th Street. There was access to pools and opportunities to experience nature at sleepaway camps in the Cuyahoga Valley. There were hunting clubs, cabin sites, music halls, all frequented and owned by Black people. We loved to recreate, but white people were not receptive to it. Oftentimes, these facilities were subject to ambushes, burnings, and arrest. In 1946, an article in The Crisis, an NAACP publication, stated, "Would a Negro like to pursue a little happiness at a theater, a beach, pool, hotel, restaurant, on a train, plane, or ship, a golf course, somewhere winter resort? Would he like to stop overnight at a tourist camp while he motors about his native land seeing America first? Well, just let him try." What the author was saying is when Black people tried to take an holiday, road trip, participate in leisure activities, he was often met with harassment, vitriol, maliciousness, and sometimes violence. While traveling, there were sundown towns that Black persons could not be in after the sun went down or be subjected to criminal penalties of the town's choosing. Yes, there were plenty of them in Ohio, especially in the southern and central portions of the state, as close as Niles. Hate and the KKK were active in Ohio. Akron, just down the road, was known as the national center of the second wave of the Ku Klux Klan. Even though freedom was granted, the ideas of equality were not achieved. Jim Crow actuated on the beliefs that Blacks were innately, intellectually, and culturally inferior to white people, through separate but equal practices upheld by the Supreme Court decision Plessy versus Ferguson. When traveling in everyday life, Blacks, mostly in the South and border states, had to endure substandard facilities and conditions. These conditions were a barrier to travel and made it difficult to find food, shelter, and even toilets. To prevent Black travelers from enduring embarrassing and difficult situations, Victor Green published the Negro Motorist, and sometimes called Traveler's Green Book, a guide listing businesses and facilities that were friendly to Black customers. Cleveland businesses were listed on a couple of those pages in the book. The book provided categories for hotels, restaurants, beauty parlors, taxi cabs, and nightclubs. Cleveland had a thriving, multi-generational Black community, with many of the Black residents living on the east side of Cleveland. If you can imagine 55th and Kinsman and Woodland, those are prominent black communities, which still remain black communities. There were blacks in all socioeconomic classes, but their common class was black, and this prevented them from truly enjoying all of the amenities in Cleveland. Even though they could access the amenities, they were often limited to special days and sometimes limited sections. The map that is to come shows a few locations along the lake that were frequented but restricted to blacks. Euclid Beach, Gordon Beach, and Edgewater Beach all had unrestricted codes about blacks being at the beach. White people abhorred blacks getting in the water with them, and often when blacks would go to the beach, they would face attacks from the police, the lifeguards, and the white patrons. Gordon Park, located at 79th and I-90, was once a swimming beach and park. As more blacks moved to the city and acclimated to the region, they sought out recreational opportunities. They were often met with hostility from the lifeguards, the beachgoers, and police. As blacks continued to frequent the beach, whites chose to go to other locations, and money was divested from the beach. In the 60s, I-90 was built, separating the beach from the park, and eventually it was removed. Euclid Beach Park was a popular amusement park that opened as a segregated park in 1895. Blacks could only attend on certain days, and they were not allowed in the skating rink, dance hall, or on the beach. Gordon Park, Euclid Beach Park, and Edgewater Beach were not listed in the Green Book. Victor focused on the locations and businesses that were black-friendly. It was usually the misfortune of the black visitor to discover the hostility on their own. One safe place that was listed in the Green Book was the 9th Street Pier. The C&B Transit Company had a parcel and passenger boat between Cleveland and Buffalo, and Cleveland to Cedar Point and Sandusky. Many organizations like the National Alliance of Postal Workers and a professional organization for black postal and federal workers would host moonlight and breakfast cruises. This legacy is still alive today. Many black fraternal organizations like Alpha Phi Alpha, Kappa Alpha Psi, and Omega Psi Phi host annual boat rides, an homage to the one place on the lake that blacks have been able to gather without threat. In honor of the many black Clevelanders who were harmed while being black in recreational and travel locations, Mayor Bibb set a vision for the waterfront to be a place of healing, proliferating racial equality. This is in alignment with Victor's goal to put himself out of business because the race will have equal opportunities and privileges. Lake Erie is a great place to continue and achieve his goal.
Keisha, thank you so much. Coming up next, we have Firen Young. Firen serves as the Asiatown Community Organizer at Midtown Cleveland, Inc., where she engages neighborhood planning and asset-based community development efforts for the Asiatown neighborhoods. Firen is originally from China, received her master's degree in social work from Case Western Reserve University, and a BS in sociology from Beijing. She thinks that sincere concern and mutual support can foster a sense of community belonging. Furthermore, discussing food with Asiatown locals is a great approach to start a conversation. Firen believes that there is no difficulty that cannot be solved by eating Szechuan hot pot. If there is, then have another hot pot. Please welcome Firen to the stage.
Test. Yeah, it's too tall. Thank you. Hi everyone, Farah, originally from China. As you say, I'm the Asiatown Community Organizer, and very glad to see you today. Today, I'm going to introduce the Asiatown history and why Asiatown is connected with Lake Erie. And before I talk about that, let me introduce Asiatown team quickly. Our team member, Karis, Naomi, Hope, and I focused on support our Asiatown business by connecting resources, celebrate culture in the neighborhood like Lunar New Year, Mid-Autumn Festival, and empower Asiatown residents by building networks. And before talk about the history, maybe you will think, oh, history is something on the textbook, it's boring. But history for Asiatown is definitely where we start and learn from. So do you know when did the first Asian immigrants settled in Cleveland? 1860s. So the first Chinese immigrants settled west of Ontario Street on today's West 3rd Street. From the start, two merchant associations, An Leong Tong and Hepson, supported the community and maintained their own cultural values and traditions. Similar to other parts of the country, Cleveland's Chinatown was seen as a type of slum and consequently targeted for demolition in the early 90s. Beginning in 1930s, Cleveland Chinatown relocated on Rockwell Avenue between East 21st Street and 24th Street, was the hub of the Chinese community. The community is growing and diversifying within the new defined Asiatown neighborhoods, now boundary roughly by St. Clair Avenue, Penn Avenue, and East 30 to 40th Street. So what can you find based on the movement from original Chinatown to Asiatown now? You can simply identify the history by those relocation, but why the movement happens? There is a story maybe can help you find the answer. The Chinese merchandise associations known as TOMS experienced a period of intensive rivalry that sometimes turned violent. In 1925, with rival associations become a problem, almost a crime in the city, the safety director issued the arrest of all Chinese male in Cleveland. The Cleveland Press reported that 800 Chinese residents were jailed at that time, including students and children. In addition, the city closed all the Chinatown shops, commanding 9 buildings along Ontario Street. The mass arrest embarrassed the city. In a word, the relocation is about exclusion policies, acts, and violent suppression. This is not a single incident. This is xenophobic discrimination occurs throughout Cleveland, Asiatown from 1860s to the pandemic, from West 3rd Street to Penn Avenue. Today, Asiatown is home to diverse population over 2,000 residents. We have large population but hard to be seen. We are once the closest community to the lake, but we were forced to leave our homes. So if I ask you now, what's your impression of Asiatown? Most of you maybe answer is restaurant. Yeah, the food is good. But I want to let you know that Asiatown is not just the food. Based on our Imagine Asiatown growing home planning, for what I say, Asiatown is home for all of the Asian population and all sense of belonging for our residents from Asian, Indian, China, Japan, Korean, Vietnamese, Filipino, Myanmar, Afghanistan, and so on. So let's come back to our lakefront topic. Why this is important for Asians to live near water? Water in Asian culture means kindness. It's a philosophy of lifestyle to how to get along well with others. There is a famous sentence from Tao Te Ching is 上善若水，水利万物而不争. It means the highest kindness is like water. Water benefits all things and does not compete with others. And we also have a lot of festivals based on the water, like Dragon Boat Festival. We have Dragon Boat Race, and put the lake lamps on the water, play water movies in Mid-Autumn festivals. So water for us means connect with everything. It's a spirit of community that makes all the connection and care. And water also is endless growth and spirit canvas to it everywhere. This is how Asiatown means a community. This is how we means like water, like community. So we have a lot of Asiatown residents stories here, like some of the seniors love to walk to the lakeside every morning, and the family will get together every week in Edgewater Park. The Chinese square dancing team will have picnic each year in Lakewood Park. An accessible lake view for them means spirit of gathering. They have a high need to easily to get to the lake, but unfortunately for the transportation system in Cleveland, it's not very accessible for them from Asiatown to the lake. But I would say transportation system in Cleveland is also like the water. It's a floor of Cleveland at home. And transportation barriers for Asian residents means they cannot take a safe walk to the lake, but also like water, we will growing at home, feel more at home in Cleveland, and welcome to Asiatown like home, welcome to Cleveland at home. Thank you.
Thank you again. For the final of the kind of timed presentations, we are going to welcome Andrew Sargent. Andrew is a landscape architect and tech enthusiast looking to pioneer the use of technology in landscape architecture. He researched immersive technology in the field of landscape architecture through the 2019 Landscape Architecture Fellowship for Innovation and Leadership. He was an Enterprise Rose Fellow, and we are so lucky to have him here tonight. Please welcome Andrew to the podium.
So I think my presentation is a bit more personal than any of the other ones, but it starts with, again, my journey into the profession, but also kind of a retrospective of how I got to Cleveland. Young Drew wanting to be a landscape starchitect, which essentially just means I want to be the best at my job. And we have some landscape starchitects leading the lakefront plan with field ops. I started my career at a firm in Philadelphia called Olin. Here's my team on a parking day exhibit. And interestingly enough, the only time that I left the office on official business was to come to Cleveland to present at the Art Museum for a competition. And Olin is actually the now firm contracted to do the Parks and Rec Master Plan for Cleveland. After that, I did a brief stint in Austin, Texas, learning how both planning and capital improvement with landscape architecture kind of created this kind of symbiosis, again, for large-scale endeavors similar to what we're doing at the lakefront. And in 2020, there was a kind of a seismic shift in the world, but also in my career, of course, with the pandemic, but of course, the death of George Floyd. So I had a big reflection of, what did I really want to do with my career and affecting, people who are less served or disadvantaged, and really looked for a big shift, and that came with the Rose Fellowship. Essentially, with Enterprise Foundation, they target nonprofit agencies across the nation and set design professionals to advance their capacity in those areas. So I came to Cleveland looking to make a difference in communities, specifically of color, and doing work that seems like a lot of people forget about. One of the unique projects that I've been fortunate of working on is the Sideway Bridge in the Kinsman and Slavic Village neighborhood, a bridge that was burned in 1968, adjacent to the Huff Riots in 63, basically a living manifestation of racial tension within the city. And, shifting to kind of my embrace of the city, this is a view from my apartment looking at downtown, is how, some of these projects can be centered in kind of the shining gem of downtown, and some of the things that I enjoy about the lakefront from my neighborhood in Edgewater, how some of these things can make themselves manifest. In Austin, I realized that I was a lake person, so this is a picture of me on Lady Bird Lake, which is technically not a lake, it's just a section of the Colorado River. So I think, again, a longing to be on the lake has brought me to Cleveland. And I think, again, Cleveland's, you hear people talk about the kind of unique treasure that Lake Erie is. I think some of the things that you'll hear from the design team in paying key consideration to not only kind of the natural phenomena, gorgeous sunsets on Lake Erie like this one, but also some of the key features in the design for equity, hospitality, access to recreation like the beach on Edgewater that I frequent very often. And pretty much providing a well-rounded experience for all the residents within Cleveland. And also kind of thinking about the comprehensive experience on the lake, that actually being out on the water and looking back at the city is something that we can enjoy as well. So the idea that, again, what is a parking lot is going to turn into publicly accessible land for everyone is a quite a large endeavor, but one well worth it. And also focusing on multimodal transportation. I'm an avid bike rider. You can see my e-bike in the picture there, and understanding that making sure that it's accessible by all means, and understanding that the lake has an extreme dynamism. So, in this picture right here, the lake completely changes in the winter. I like to joke with people back home that Cleveland has 2 seasons. It's summer and winter. We kind of skip the fall sometimes. It's been kind of gracious to us right now. But the lake turns into, this kind of magical landscape oftentimes in the winter. And the design team is also focused on making sure that people can enjoy the lake at those times as well. And then bringing things that, again, that are featured in the neighborhood or the neighborhoods of Cleveland out to the lakefront as well. So ideas of shops and dining. One of my favorite things to do is go to the West Side Market, pick up things, ride on my bike. Maybe that has a space for that as the lakefront. Events and music, concerts. This is kind of the Ohio City concert series. So, again, all of these kind of events and spaces to be featured at the lakefront as well. And also trying to make sure that the lakefront is uniquely Cleveland, and I think that comes with bringing in people. So one of the things I like to enjoy as well is kind of this makers market outside of the Contemporary Art Museum. So finding a space where Clevelanders can represent themselves, not only enjoying themselves at the lakefront, but also in commerce as well. And I think Cynthia and I had the same idea about doubling up on this picture of the Edgewater Playground. I think playgrounds, especially as a landscape architect, are extremely important for public spaces, as they're kind of an immense civic anchor and really like a unification for people of all races, ages, and so on. And I think, in closing, I think one of the unique things about Cleveland is that, despite what some people might say, is that the fact that all the sports stadiums are in city proper is an immense gift, to be honest. So, growing up in Philadelphia, you have to go all the way to a large parking lot outside of the city. And I think the design team is thinking comprehensively about what that game day experience is going to be. I know there's some potential muni lotters in the audience today and probably watching, and the design team is thinking about you and what game day and what that experience is going to look like, and specifically how it's going to change downtown. And ultimately, if things go well, you can enjoy this kind of image, which is potentially the Browns winning a Super Bowl, as long as they don't face the Philadelphia Eagles. So, thank you.
All right, why don't we do one more round of applause for the first 5 presenters of the night. That is not necessarily an easy format to present in, but did want to thank everyone for doing an awesome job, just like we knew you were going to. And with that, I would like to invite back up to the stage Allison to introduce our final presenter for the evening.
So this is also our transition in between slide decks so that Lisa does not have to talk in the 20-second format for each one of her slides. So it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Lisa Switkin, who is a recognized design leader and partner at Field Operations. Recently became partner of the organization, so big congratulations to her. She is a leading, yes, absolutely. We're so lucky to have her here. We'll double team this here. Okay, so she is a leading edge landscape architect and urban design practice, where she leads many of the firm's complex public realm projects. With a background in urban planning and landscape architecture, she is committed to improving cities through the design of a resilient, holistic, and vibrant public space. She's championed design and planning projects that creatively contend with complex issues, related to social equity, climate change, and sustainable urbanism, all of which I think you'll see in the draft master plan tonight. She's known for her collaborative leadership style, thoughtful design sensibilities, and creative approach to public outreach and engagement. For over 20 years, Lisa has been intimately involved in many multidisciplinary projects, including New York City's High Line, Domino Park in Brooklyn, Santa Monica's Tongva Park, the Gavensport Peninsula in Hudson River Park, and the 1.5-mile-long river balcony in St. Paul. The Underline in Miami, I'm going to continue to read all the amazing projects she's part of. The Underline in Miami, Waterfront Seattle, which is one of the projects that really we drew a lot of inspiration from a process perspective of how to get from concept to completion. And finally, most recently and most importantly, Cleveland's North Coast Lakefront. Other signature projects include Philadelphia's Ray Street Pier, Nicollet Mall in Minneapolis, Newark's Riverfront Park, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame expansion, which is about to break ground here in November. Lisa is a past president of the Landscape Architecture Foundation, and in 2008 she was a Rome Prize recipient at the American Academy in Rome. She has a Bachelor of Urban Planning with a focus on community development and planning from the University of Illinois, and a Master of Landscape Architecture and Regional Planning from the University of Pennsylvania. And I think just on a personal note here, we are just so thrilled to have Lisa and her team, including Cricket Day, that I want to call out as a designer here, to really have listened first to the community. I think that was a really strong ethos that this team brought from the forefront of the planning process here. And I hope tonight you will see the connectivity of the through line of all of the amazing stories surfaced by our PechaKucha presenters illustrated here in this draft master plan. So without further ado, we'll turn it over to Lisa.
Thank you so much. Wow, what an incredible night. Hearing all of these stories has really been immensely inspiring. And I think that this work and your stories are so foundational, really, not only in grounding the master plan, but also in bringing it to life as it develops over time. So thank you so much. I'm really thrilled to be here and to be here with our team, which also includes Cleveland-based Robert P. Madison International, and there are a number of people in the audience from the firm, so hello, to really share the latest direction and development of the master plan. So as Allison mentioned, the master plan in the downtown lakefront is really part of the mayor's vision, and this was something that was really inspiring to us. It was one of the reasons why when the request for proposals came out for the master plan, we were really excited about it because of this notion of healing and really what that meant for the waterfront. For those of you who may not know what we're talking about, the North Coast Downtown Lakefront, some of you have probably been in previous meetings. Other of you, maybe it's your first time. So just to be clear, the Downtown Lakefront is really between the Port of Cleveland and Burke Airport. And it's part of a larger initiative really to connect Cleveland's riverfront, downtown, and lakefront, recognizing Cleveland as basically a two-waterfront city, and that really comes to the birth and, you know, the sort of sacred ground, actually, where the lake meets the river. And this process includes two initiatives, but it's really one vision. So there's been a little bit of discussion about the North Coast Connector, one of the projects that Keisha is leading. This is really the engineering of the land bridge and the reimagining of the shoreway, and that's what's sort of loosely called How You'll Get There. And then the North Coast Master Plan, which includes the character, the design, the shape, the vision, and the values for the lakefront, or what has been called What We'll Do When We Get There. And the city is partnering with Greater Cleveland Partnership, and there's also been an incredible engagement team that includes Murphy Epson, Compass Consulting, Third Space Action Lab, and the Full Frame Initiative. So, I mean, it was nice of you to read all about me, but this is like a massive team project. And just so people know and sort of understand, like, when they can sort of get involved and continue to be involved, this is obviously a long-term project, but the master plan itself and the connector, the master plan, and the engagement process is really overlapping and aligned, and the master plan itself is anticipated to be adopted in early 2024. So as Allison said, we always really like to start by sharing some of the things that we've heard, and some of these are kind of more by the numbers, and some of them are much deeper conversations. So To ensure that the plan was community-driven and community-centered, there's really been a robust engagement strategy. And this includes maybe some of the more standard things like public meetings and visioning workshops and surveys, but it's also included a series of forums that have really fostered much more intimate and deep conversations. And these have included focus groups and salons, and we've reached over 4,000 people in these different ways. And we're sort of continuing to reach out and collect stories. You heard Allison's plea for yours. And as I always like to say, even if you feel like you don't have a story or a relationship to the lake, that is also a story, and sort of understanding why that is the case. The engagement strategy also included going out into communities and sort of meeting people where they already were, at festivals, at community rec centers, at grocery stores, at events, and this was very intentional, trying to ensure that the diversity of feedback was reflective of the city of Cleveland. Now, these are a little bit more standard things, but we thought they were sort of important to punch out. But many of the top experiences that people said that would really excite them the most and would feel unique to Cleveland were lakeside dining, and that's not just, there was a very particular emphasis on affordable dining options at the lake, festivals, arts, and cultural events, and also a sandy beach. A lot of people also expressed a sort of nuanced desire to really balance, I'd say, three primary things: nature and green spaces, and this was really, I think, articulated as places to relax, places for respite and refuge, access to the water with different ways to engage with the water. This isn't just about, for some people, seeing the water or being in the water, and for many it was actually a literal like connection to the water. And also places for community to really gather, to kind of bring a sense of community and to continue that vision, on the lakefront. And there were a number of values that were actually unearthed that really had to do with fostering an environment that was inclusive and welcoming to all, providing opportunities for economic growth and development, and also promoting sustainability, sort of access to nature, public access, recreation, integration of history and art. So this is kind of trying to show that there was this notion of this balance of sort of different primary programs, again, balancing sort of the water, and that include many different ways to engage with it, places for community, places for sort of nature and green space and ecology, as well as economic development opportunities. And these, again, were focused on providing places, especially for local businesses, with a variety and mix of uses. So we are extremely lucky to be working with Third Space Action Lab, and they led a series of conversations. And so it's even hard for me to try and do this for them because they are so incredible with how they sort of articulate some of the key insights from these series, but I'm going to try. And there were three conversations that they decided to sort of create themes around. One was this idea of whole history, the other, the front porch, and the third, a lakefront for everyone. So the whole history salon really included key insights around the indigenous tribe's relationship to the lake, and this was brought up by Cynthia as well, and the lake itself as a sacred life source and a center for cultural gathering and sharing. And so again, this notion of not just a relationship of extraction or what it sort of can give to me, but how we can also give back to the lake. Also, a key insight about BIPOC historically being excluded from the lakefront through redlining, social exclusion, policing, and structural racism. And then, of course, sort of the last one, this idea of an understanding that in order for the future lakefront to be a space of healing, it actually has to do a lot, right? It has to acknowledge and remedy past harms. It has to elevate and integrate all of these voices and stories that we're hearing today, and also, continue the work that, is all of our work to do for the next however long, probably forever. The front porch salon really included key insights around porch culture and the porch as a kind of refuge, as well as a multi-use space that incorporates public and private sort of spaces. This idea of like being in a private space, but being able to sort of see everyone and what they're doing out there and people watch. And it was also ideas about how porch designs, and you'll see this as a common element and theme on the lakefront, should reflect Cleveland's identity and really showcase the uniqueness of the broader Cleveland. And this was an idea about, through architecture, art, design, programming, and then there were deeper discussions around ownership of the porches and how they would be used and accessed. The third salon was about a lakefront for everyone, and this conversation included key insights around access to water being a privilege that not all Clevelanders have, how the lakefront needs to prioritize diverse small and local businesses that are reflective of the communities and promote inclusivity as well as wealth building, and how our narrative, our kind of collective narrative that we're building for the lakefront and the unveiling of the lakefront over time needs to really reach far and wide. And these are ongoing conversations. I mean, it's very hard. They just scratched the surface of many of these things, but there are a number of sort of initial considerations and implications that emerged as part of these conversations and that will continue to guide the work and the development of design in the future. So coming to the lakefront itself, there's a number of inspirations and principles that really have informed our thinking. And one of the ideas was about varying the shoreline. And this isn't just a design sort of move. It's about creating dynamic and diverse experiences along the water's edge, but also opportunity to sort of embrace the water in different ways, as well as to support its ecological health. So again, this notion of sort of reciprocity. The idea of whole history, and this is a slide that you may have seen before, but the process of really exploring and telling and collecting personal stories and finding ways to integrate them into the design. This is something that I think is definitely an ongoing task for all of us that, has one thing in planning is setting it as a goal and then something probably very different as it materializes into the design. And the idea for this is that it can also spark new opportunities for storytelling to really strengthen connections to the lake. The idea of Cleveland's porch, so this sort of came out of that design prompt and building off of Third Space Action Lab's sort of salon series, thinking of the porch and Cleveland's porch culture as, inspiring ideas and ways to foster a sense of belonging, to provide sort of more intimate, casual, and informal experiences at the lake, and really showcase a lot of individuality and diversity. And then finally, the flow lines, and some of these maps were actually seen in the previous presentations. So the site has really been influenced by various movements over time, from the indigenous lakefront trails to the Underground Railroad. All of these things have left both a physical but also a psychological and even a spiritual mark on the site. And these flows have really inspired the design vocabulary. So we're trying to sort of think of both traces of historical flows as well as think about creating new flows. So these were some of the first sketches and diagrams that we did. And you can kind of see how concepts and these flows really shaped the site and created an organizational framework that varies the edge, that sort of embraces both the city and the lake and talks about this connection back and forth, as well as creates a lakefront for everyone with sort of areas to experience joy through nature, through play, through economic opportunity, and through gathering. So I'm going to walk you through, this is not the master plan, the focus of some of the changes in the work that we've been doing. But I think this hopefully is a clear message of why this project is even in existence and the opportunity that we have to create a stronger relationship to the lake and to sort of give back to the lake. So the focus of the master plan is really a 22-acre site approximately north of the Brown Stadium, where these current, those actually two buildings have been demolished, but where the existing parking lots are. And this was the plan that we shared back in August, so just a few months ago, about 2.5 months ago. And we've been refining that plan with a number of sort of key shifts and changes. And I can toggle back and forth one or two times. But some of the key changes really included integrating the newest Lakeshore Boulevard alignment, and the thinking from the connector team has been incorporated. There's been a sort of rescaling of the multimodal hub, which was always an idea that there would be a multimodal transit hub that would actually connect to the connector. And this has been based on conversations with RTA and Amtrak and even some of the bus lines, and also based on the 2018 Cleveland Lakefront Multimodal Transit Facility study. There's been a number of strengthened connections from the land bridge, actually east to the Rock Hall and to the Great Lakes Science Center to ensure that it's not just a north-south land bridge, but that it makes key connection both to the future stadium renovation as well as to the east. There's been an entirely new and reconfigured sort of beach and wetlands. And this is, I'll talk a little bit more about this, but it's really to increase both safety, but also sort of ecological impact. And the beach is now really perched high, so the sand doesn't descend into the water. And you can see there's a series of wetlands at the edge to create a more naturalized shoreline. Here you can see the plan. A lot of people find plans confusing who aren't architects and landscape architects, so I'm just going to flip to the next one, which I think is probably a little easier for people to read. So there are two primary axes. You can see the curved land bridge that actually connects downtown from the malls down to the lake. And there's also this diagonal spine that kind of cuts through, and this also reaches back to the city. And there's sort of three loose pockets. On the east side, there's kind of activities related to play and recreation, and this includes a large nature play area, sports courts, sort of cookout area, and a sun deck. There's the kind of place that's more dedicated to sort of nature with water access and the wetlands on the shoreline. There is some integrated development to provide more economic opportunities, which is directly north of the stadium, and there was a lot of work to sort of balance this appropriately to ensure that it didn't privatize the lakefront and that it didn't take over the majority of the lakefront. And then there's a large community plaza for festivals and events really in the center where the land bridge descends and meets the lake, as well as a flexible sort of sloped lawn, which also works for sledding in the winter and has views of the working port right next door. And this is just another view of that. And, you know, I think that in this view, you can really see that spine, that sort of urban promenade that pulls back and extends. It actually ends as a fishing pier at the end and then reconnects to the community park that's part of the current Rock Hall expansion project. You can see the sort of integrated development really designed to resemble a village. It's just massing. This is not a design, but it's meant to sort of show the scale and ideas in terms of recommendations for how it has active ground floors, is publicly accessible, et cetera. You can see the naturalized shoreline, which has been reconfigured. And in the distance, as part of a sort of longer 20-year vision, there is the potential to have future, more transit-oriented development for a portion of the Muni lots. Another angle, just so you can sort of see this, and I think you can see in this image the way the lakefront really embraces and ties back to the city. And so the new land bridge, of course, connects to the malls, but there's also strengthened connections at East 9th, at West 3rd, and the Diagonal Promenade, et cetera. And so the idea here was not to have a singular sort of access point, but to encourage multiple. This is a view from the water, and it's really showing the sort of layering of the site and how the elevation changes and the topography actually helps to create not only the varied edge and shoreline with sort of sheltered and protected spaces, but this approach also allows for sort of various activities to occur in close proximity to each other through topography. You can sort of separate that. And it also really offers a lot of intimate experiences that really break down the scale of the overall waterfront. And it, too, can sort of buffer between the development of the public space from, you know, the sort of more developed economic components to ensure that they don't feel privatized. The topography and planting also help increase comfort and serve as windbreaks during the colder seasons, which is helpful. So again, this is a view, but it tries to again highlight the fact that it's not just about connecting downtown to the lake, but also connecting to transit via the new transit hub. And again, not a design, just showing the scale that this would be, as well as connections to the Rock Hall, to the Great Lakes Science Center, et cetera. And I think there is really a great opportunity, since we're on this slide, for an iconic sort of inviting and civic building that has a lot of visibility, not only from the land bridge, but also from the railroad and from the road below. So this is a view from the top of the land bridge, that connection, strengthened connection to the Rock Hall and the Great Lakes Science Center. We are very well aware of the seasons here, so trying to represent it in more than one. The end of the land bridge looking back towards the downtown skyline. So this is really what we call like the landing. It provides this perfect spot to take in the sunset. It has overlooks and seating steps, and there's gentle slopes that create really a sense of drama and almost respect, I think, as you enter the space of the lake. It's like a durational experience that prepares you for that. This is a view from the top of the land bridge looking east over the nature playground. The sports courts and the cookout grove are just off the page. And there is an idea for community-based amenities underneath the land bridge here, including public restrooms, an elevator. And it also shows how, these activities are also in many ways on display with incredible views from the land bridge above. An image of the nature playground and the sports courts, and again, this is sited on the east side, really to have a direct relationship to the Rock Hall and the Great Lakes Science Center, which really builds off of their mission and focus on education. And a winter view of that. I still think people will do it. We'll see. You'll tell me. The Central Community Plaza. So this is the sort of, it was oriented, the stairs are oriented to have that sort of sunset view, and you can see the porches in the distance. And again, the idea that this could transform in the winter as a sort of seasonal hub. It's actually sized to fit a hockey ice rink, which apparently no other place in the city can fit outdoors. So that could be exciting. This is the sun deck at the edge, and we've heard from avid boaters in the boating community that they would love to tie up here, not even necessarily to get out of their boats, just to tie up and have a place to sort of rest. So we're thinking about integrating, cleats and ways for that to happen along the edge. And this is a view of that perched, by perched I just mean sitting up high, beach with a series of ledges that allow you to go down. So here originally we thought we could have a sand beach that would descend all the way to the water's edge, but it's actually I think a 28-foot drop or so. So in order to increase safety and also recognizing that this is an active navigation channel, we decided to sort of create a much more protected, area. But I think what this really does, it also creates such a variety in that edge. So you have the sandy beach, you have the ledges. There's an opportunity to have a much more shallow area where people can engage with the lake water. There's the wetlands. Those are actually separated by an earthen berm and flushed out through the lake. And then you have the sort of riprap edge, which the opportunity to actually experience that wetland as both, for education, for refuge, and just as something that is improving the ecology and water quality of the lake itself. The porches are one of my favorite pieces of the lakefront, and the idea of the concept for the porches is actually for a series of really distinctive porches, and they're each supposed to showcase their own individuality, personality, flair. They're envisioned really as intimate places with different materials and different styles, and aggregated together they're sort of called the porches, but it's not a monumental porch. It's all these sort of small, cozy places. And this is a place where we really feel like we could see them as a moment to sort of really integrate ideas of that whole history, the sort of stories, whether that's in the naming of them, the style of them, et cetera. And there's also been a lot of excitement around these being an opportunity to collaborate with artists. So different artists could design each of the porches. And this is a view from one of the porches looking out towards the wetlands and the breakwater. And the idea that these could actually be transformed into warming huts in the wintertime. This is a view of the fishing pier at the end along that spine, looking back to the city, as well as the large sloped lawn in the foreground. And that lawn is sloped to allow for sledding. You guys wouldn't have been able to do that in your presentation, but I can go back and forth. I feel sort of badly that I broke the format. And then finally, we just wanted to highlight a couple of the sort of economic development opportunities. So this is obviously a long-term project that would be phased over time. And there are a number of potentials for economic development. And I think preliminary phasing has really been considering a sort of phase one that would really start at the lakefront, so where you're seeing the red, pink, salmon-ish color. And then phase two and beyond are actually, depending on market, et cetera, depending on many different things. But we sort of see that phase two potentially could be the multimodal transit hub, which could then allow for certain transit-oriented development adjacent to it. And then there's a 20-year sort of vision where potentially some of the muni lots here, we're showing it at one of the intersections along the shoreway, a portion of that being developed. You can still see plenty of parking space around it for all the tailgating and that culture, which we also want to sort of keep and enrich that experience on the lakefront. The idea, and again, these aren't designed buildings, but the idea is that the development would be integrated and ensure public access. There would be active ground floors. There would be space for community space, but also that it would have really open space, and there's a series of garden walks that actually connect and go through. There is an idea for a boutique hotel that could actually slip under the land bridge and sort of create a really welcoming entry. So this is coming in from that, a sort of portal that allows you to go from the east to the lakefront. There is a notion here as well as potentially even being able to use the underside for public art. We're actually showing here one of the maps of the old indigenous trails and landmarks. I think ideally it would not be that, but it would be something done by an indigenous artist, but something that actually marks the site. I'd be really interested to hear Cynthia's opinion on that. And then there's also been an idea for a food hall that could really showcase affordable, varied, and local fare, and we're sort of showing it as like a taste of Cleveland that could potentially be integrated on the lakefront and provide different opportunities and varied opportunities from what's, I would say, from a lack of what is there today. And you can kind of see that taste of Cleveland in the corner here, and this is along that spine, so it's another kind of entry into the lakefront that we think would be incredibly welcoming, going out that spine and ending at the fishing pier. And of course, the design is also meant to enhance the game day experience. It's not meant to be apart from it. And so we do think that, both can sort of function in the same place, and this can only sort of enhance that experience. So that's where we are right now. And yeah, it's really been an incredible pleasure to hear all these stories and to share our process and where we are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Okay, we have about another hour left here in the Rock Hall, but not in this room. So I hope that you all have enjoyed hearing the inspiring stories tonight, past and present. And again, this is my plug. We are going to go down to the third floor, so one level down. You can take the elevator or the escalator down. There is an open house. We have some past apps and a cash bar, but also the opportunity that I'm sure many of you are wanting to talk to Lisa and her team and Director Joyce Wong, who I saw walk in, our planning director here at the City of Cleveland, to talk to them about the project, to share your ideas, and interact with exhibit boards where we have some of the renders and the plans, and also to share your story. So I hope that you've been inspired by this to co-create with us. Hopefully some of these beautiful park spaces where there are currently parking lots today. And so with that, I hope you all will stay around for the next hour or so. And again, join us downstairs on the 3rd floor to interact with the team and our amazing presenters from PechaKucha. Mike, did you get the photo you wanted? Okay, awesome. You were all in a photo. You've all been live streamed, too, for the past hour and a half, but we didn't share that with you on Facebook. But so, again, thank you for being here. This concludes our formal program. Hope to see you downstairs. And thank you for all of your input that we hope to receive from you tonight. And also on the survey, on the QR code, I think I may be remiss here. There was a slide that has a QR code, but you all have QR codes in your hands, and you'll get more of them downstairs. Please take the survey. Your input, as you can see, is just so critically important to shaping this project for all of us, for all of Cleveland. Again, thank you, and we'll see you downstairs.